I want to first get to Skye and Amanda and Danny, who are here representing your sister, Virginia Giuffre. Danny, Skye, what message does it send to be here with this group in this, what, as Liz described, this almost show of strength?
Oh, sorry. She should be here. I am so honored to be here with you guys. She would be here. She'd be screaming, you know. And I think, you know, they said it best. It's like, if I could really say what we're looking for out of this is justice, looking for accountability. And I think it's, you know, we really have to start questioning what
that guy, the brother of the one lady that spoke out, she ended up dying. You know, she was a major spokesperson against Epstein, and I know she was messed up. I mean, I know so many people that have been molested, and they're messed up. It messes you up for life, dude. I mean, I have 3 girlfriends that were molested by their fathers, dude. I mean, this is over a period of like 20 some years that I've ran into 3 different women that have been abused by their dads, and they were all messed up. They all like have severe boundary issues, sexual promiscuity issues, like just their mental health issues, you know, and then my one friend who, like I said, had a porn addiction problem, my gay friend, you know, who had sex addiction and porn addiction problems in a previous video. He was abused as a kid by a neighbor's married dad, you know? And, you know, so even if a dude's married and, you know, it doesn't mean he couldn't be a sexual predator to young boys. I'm just saying this guy was a married dude living next door to him. He used to play with their kid, and the dad diddled him, and then it jacked him up for life. You know, he developed problems with his sexuality, you know? I mean, and it just jacks people up forever, you know? And then because people can't hold these mofos to account, they do it to so many other people, you know? And like I said, I had 3 diddle attempts before the age of 12. I had that happen to me. Fortunately, I never got diddled sexually, thank God. Sexual abuse, because I've seen the damage that's caused with so many people that I've known throughout the years. Like, oh my God, it's like it has long-ranging, lasting effects on people, and these mofos don't get called out, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, all because of sycophantry. Like happened in the Catholic Church, sycophantry. Oh, these priests, they're next to God. No, they're not. They're not next to God. Only God's fucking God. You know, like even if you actually read the teachings of Buddha and Christ didn't even want people sucking their dick and being sycophants to them. They wanted them to practice and apply their teachings to their lives so that they can alleviate suffering in their own lives and in the lives of others. They wanted practice, not, you know, sycophantic dick-sucking behavior. You know, I'm just saying, you know, if you actually look at the teachings themselves and not get caught up in the dogmatic doctrines that emanate people using the teachings in order to gain power and control. I'm just saying. And so, like, if Buddha or Christ didn't even want you sucking their dick, how the hell are you going to, like, suck the dick, you know, and be sycophantic to some faulty, jacked up human being, you know, which a lot of these celebrities are. They're not these perfect beings. They might have extreme talents in certain areas of their life, but they're not these like God kings that we put them on these pedestals and stuff, dude. I'm just saying, okay? And so I think in order and for a lot of this kind of stuff to stop, people have to call it out before it goes on for freaking decades, and they have to be able to hold nuance. I'm just saying.
Coming up,
her words, her actions started a movement of change.
remembering Virginia Giuffre's incredible bravery.
It's really hard being back here.
It should be ripped down. It should be burned to the ground.
The woman who fought to tell the truth.
She put Epstein in prison. She put Maxwell in prison.
This is a real photo.
She had Prince Andrew stripped of his titles.
After a shocking abuse of power.
While Virginia could face many demons, that moment was more than she could handle.
That's next on 60 Minutes. This is a story of great tragedy, but also remarkable triumph. We first met sex abuse survivor Virginia Giuffre 6 years ago when she was in combat mode, on a mission to bring to account the notorious trio of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew. For years, Virginia crusaded for justice and an end to human sex trafficking. But sadly, 2 weeks ago, haunted by physical and emotional scars, the 41-year-old died at her home north of Perth. Those closest to her will always be awed by her strength and the hope she gave to so many. Virginia Giuffre's life was never easy. But she overcame sexual abuse as a young girl, homelessness, and sex trafficking rings to make an extraordinary difference.
I think Virginia's legacy is something that we haven't seen before in our history. She has left us with a feeling that irrespective of whether you're a president, a politician, a billionaire, or a prince, that you can be held accountable. You are not above the law.
To her lawyer and friend, Sigrid McCauley, Virginia was lion-hearted, and her message reverberated around the world when she most famously and courageously accused Prince Andrew of having sex with her while she was still a minor. How many times were you trafficked to him?
3 times.
So as you know, Prince Andrew denies the allegations against him, and he says that this photo is a fake, that he was never there, and that he's not his arm, and they're not his fingers.
Those are his fingers. That is Andrew. This photo has been verified as an original, and it's been since given to the FBI. And he needs to stop with all of these lame excuses. We're sick of hearing it. This is a real photo.
Virginia's decision to be the first to forego anonymity to also accuse billionaire Jeffrey Epstein and socialite Ghislaine Maxwell of sex abuse and sex trafficking changed the course of many lives. To take on those names and that power, how brave was that?
Virginia's just remarkable. She put Epstein in prison. She put Maxwell in prison. She had Prince Andrew stripped of his titles. It is truly tremendous. Financial institutions that settled with the Epstein survivors for many millions of dollars. Her words, her actions were incredible. And they started a movement of
Props, Virginia. Thank you. I mean, because the guts that it took to have to stand up to people like that abuse their power, have enormous amounts of wealth to buy like those high-powered attorneys to give voice to other people. Oh my God. I can only give props to people like this. Oh my God. And of course, she was traumatized by what happened to her, and unfortunately passed away. It totally sucks. Celebrity culture forces abuse victims into silence. We have to acknowledge this is true, that individuals are responsible for their own behavior, and that any individual who abuses another must be held to account for this. We also need to understand that all behavior takes place within a cultural context. And like, this is kind of true because a lot of like these kind of situations happen because of systemic ideas about power and control. And a lot of times abusers get away with shit because of the systems around and held in place around them. I had the 3 diddle attempts happen to me. One was it was all before the age of 12. And one was a dude I was in a plane. I was like flying by myself to go visit one parent to visit another one who lived across the country. And this dude, I was like 8 years old, and this dude tried to like get me in the bathroom, and he grabbed my ass. I'm like, ew, this dude was in his 30s too. Like he was like, I'm like, ew, like how the hell do you want, like, I just, ugh. And that's the only thing he got away with, was grabbing my ass. And I didn't go to the bathroom with him. And fortunately there was a lot of other people around, and the flight attendants and everything. So and he wasn't like a grooming pedo, because a lot of times pedos groom their kids, groom their victims to make them feel complicit in the act of abuse, right? But then another time, the two other times I had diddle attempts on me, no one believed me when I brought it up. Like one time one of my batshit crazy ass dysfunctional uncles tried to diddle me, and no one believed me, you know? My mom didn't even believe me, you know, but of course she came from the same dysfunctional situation that he did. I used to babysit for a family who had a pedo like that had ingratiated themselves into the family. And the dude tried to make an attempt on diddling me, didn't get away with it. Fortunately, none of them got away with it. But they made initial attempts. And I said something, you know, I said some shit. And again, they didn't believe me. Dude, turns out this mofo had been diddling their kid for a decade. They found a whole bunch of kiddie porn. They were letting their kids sleep with this guy. Kind of like the same thing that happened in Michael Jackson case. He had ingratiated himself into his family. Their kid was like sleeping with them. And then they found a whole bunch of kiddie porn underneath his bed. It got all exposed. But if they had freaking believed my ass when I had, and researched it, when I had said some shit, I could have prevented this kid being diddled, their kid I used to babysit for. Dude, like that's what happens when you don't believe people. The shit goes on and on, you know, like people need to take these things more seriously and at least investigate. They might find that it's not true, but just, oh my God, you know, and so this kid is jacked up now. Again, my brother met him because I used to babysit both my brother and this kid at the same time when they were little. My brother met him like years later when they were both adults. And this kid did something to my brother, like as an adult. My brother won't even talk about it. I don't know what this kid did, but he grabbed him by the crotch or some crazy shit. Like, I don't know. He was just jacked up. My brother's like, he's like, I can't talk about it. Like this kid was jacked up. Probably a lot of times the pedophiles can, you know, the victims can become pedophiles themselves. Like I had a girlfriend in college who had been abused. I don't know who she had been abused by. She didn't say, but she was abused as a kid. And she said, I'm never having kids. I'm never having kids. She was honest with me about it. She's like, I'm so terrified that I'll do what happened to me to my kids. I'm never going to have them. She was just adamant. I'm just saying, like, she at least had a certain level of self-awareness about herself to acknowledge that she didn't want to ever, but like, it can shape people's psychosexuality in like all kinds of crazy ways, you know? Some people don't abuse, some, you know, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes it can just jack you up in all kinds of crazy ways. Victim blaming might not bother the survivor the first time they hear it, or the second, but to see it every day from people they consider friends or from respected news outlets, it builds up and makes survivors feel at fault, says Denning, as survivors often already feel guilty or shame, which is a normal psychological reaction to trauma. This compounds that response and makes them less likely to come forward to seek help. Denning has the following tips on how you can support people who have been abused. Listen without judgment. When someone chooses to confide in you, you can make it clear through their words and actions that they are someone you can trust. Talk about the cases in the news. Stress how much you believe the survivors featured and how you know they aren't to blame. Don't force them to go to the police or, in fact, to do anything. Don't expect them to behave in certain ways. Everyone is different, and trauma can have strange and terrible effects. The way a person behaves after trauma doesn't minimize or invalidate the suffering they are going through. While rape crisis centers are a great resource for survivors, it can also be useful for their friends and family. It may be worth visiting your local rape crisis center. But that happened in the Buddhist cult I was in. When not only did the victims of abuse get vilified, like, how dare you accuse our precious master of doing so-and-so. Also, the people that supported the victims also got vilified. People that wrote the letter, calling out all the abuse that they had seen for decades as called out. So even whistleblowers get called out. We see that all the time. Whistleblowers they call out some dysfunctional shit going on, and then they didn't even experience it directly. They just saw it, and they got called, and they get vilified. Can you imagine you're going through the abuse itself, and then people you've known for 20, 30 years turn on you? Family members turn on you? Like, friends turn on you? Oh my God. So you not only have to suffer the consequences of the abuse itself and the trauma that it's caused in your life, then you got people that you trusted, they don't believe in you either? Holy shit. And the Buddhist community is supposed to be compassion, kindness. That was the most cold-blooded shit that I've seen ever come out of a quote-unquote spiritually enlightened community, dude. A lot of the hypocrisy, freaking hypocrisy. Now I don't even trust half of them. People wonder why, people don't trust anyone anymore. I'm just saying, because this shit like this erodes people's trust. On a more positive note, there are some stories of inspiration that come out of these kind of traumatic events, like the story of Virginia Giuffre that she overcame. I mean, she unfortunately died, but the strength that she exhibited in dealing with this. And then here's another example of someone who came out on the other end with amazing strength and became a huge inspiration and helped so many people. And that's the positive thing you can get out of this, that some of these women, they overcame this, or they just didn't back down, and they just exhibited so much courage, and they ended up helping so many people and changing the course of events. Here's another example of that. Besides Virginia Giuffre, this lady, Marilyn Van Derber, she used to be Miss America, and she was an example of someone whose dad diddled her from the time she was 5 to 18. I remember being horribly freaked out when my dad was losing his marbles with dementia and making sexual comments. And that's all he even did. Because my dad was never creepy at all, which made it even more disturbing because it just showed you how much he was losing his mind. But dude, your own dad? Oh my God. And my friends had to deal with that shit, and I've seen the fallout of that. I've seen the fallout. I have friends still now struggling with the trauma and just, oh my God. And I've just seen the devastation this shit causes. But anyway, this lady was a huge inspiration.
Larry has loved me unconditionally. I've put him through every test there is. There isn't a test I haven't put him through. You ought to try telling someone that you love, who thinks you're the most perfect. He's always felt I was just perfect. I try to tell him that I'm not who you think I am at all. I'm a really bad person.
My father started coming into my room when I was 5, and it didn't stop until I was 18. The trauma was so severe that I did what many children do. In order to survive, I split. It's called dissociate. I split into a day child and a night child. I had no knowledge of the night child. The problem is, when you bury feelings alive, they just sit there until something triggers them. And then they come up like it's happening in real time. What I needed most of all was to find just one woman who had survived the reliving of the memories and the feelings. If I could find just one woman, I'd know it was possible. I never found her.
Miss America, Marilyn Vanderburg, Miss America of 1958. Thank you very much.
She was a woman capable of capturing the 1958 Miss America crown, an icon of 50s America imagining itself at its best.
But ladies and gentlemen, here is a perfectly wonderful American family.
Or so the world thought.
Because sexual abuse of children is something that happens, as with Marilyn, in the middle of the night, and because children are told that they should never tell or serious things will happen to them, they keep it silent.
The secret is too huge and too intense. You don't have relationships with anybody. All I had was my father. What I wanted to my father's death was his daytime love, and I never got that. I just got him at night, and that's all I had, and that's all I had to cling to.
This, I'm going to include this in the description, because it's so inspiring. Oh my God, it's so inspiring. This lady, just awesome. And it's like so wonderful and inspiring to see this. But anyway, and I have friends dealing with this right now, literally right now, as we speak. Like, I have a girlfriend who's been abused by her dad. And she goes through these periodic episodes, like you'll see if you watch this documentary clip, where she'll have physiological shutdowns, you know? I don't know, I've just seen that with, oh my God, I've just seen that with like, and I had another girlfriend who, I had a roommate in college. She had been abused by her dad and her uncle, and he was like a high profile dude on cover of magazines and lived in this huge mansion. So it happens of all classes and, you know, races, whatever. And she had all these horrible, dysfunctional, toxic relationships. I had her boyfriend that he used to beat the crap out of my roommate in college, and she would accept these horrible, abusive relationships. I mean, I've just seen the fallout of this, man. And then I have a girlfriend now dealing with the trauma that, you know, and what this lady's talking about, she would have these physiological breakdowns during certain periods of her life. Like in this one, she's talking about when her kid turned 5, and that was around the time she started getting abused herself. And then she would have these because there's like, we hold the trauma in our bodies, you know? And so she would have these like meltdowns, and she's talking about that here.
One of the doctors was my uncle by marriage, and he was just devastated. He couldn't figure it out. He came back in and he said, "You know, my darling, I wonder if this has anything to do with your turning 40. Perhaps Miss America could not age gracefully." Oh, his question was brilliant. It was all about age, but not my age. Jennifer was turning 5. And as she turned 5, all the memories and the feelings began coming up, and my conscious was trying to repress all of these feelings that I had. During those days, those many days when I was in paralysis for longer periods of time, I knew that I had to confront my father. And I called my father. I said, "I need to speak to you." He said, "Come on over." I drove as quickly as I could to make sure that the doors and the screens were unlocked and opened. Of all the feelings I had about my father, terror was 1 through 10. He came in and sat down on the far side of the breakfast room table, which had always been his seat. And after he was seated, I said, "This is the most difficult thing I've ever done." And he said, "I'll be back in a minute." And he went up the winding staircase 2 by 2. I waited for a phone call to be made or a toilet to be flushed, but he came back immediately. And I knew he had a gun. I knew he could kill himself or me or most probably both of us without ever batting an eye. If that sounds incomprehensible to you, you have never lived in an incest family. Terror reigns, not fear, terror. After our conversation, I rose to leave, and he pulled out the gun. He said, if you had come in any other way, I would have killed myself. Oh, the message was very clear. If you are even thinking about exposing me, take a good look at the consequences. We only spoke of it once. He said, if I had known what it would do to you, I never would have done it. For 16 years, I clung to a thin shred of hope that maybe, if he had known, he wouldn't have done it. But when I was 56, I received a letter from a woman in Denver who told me that my father had sexually violated her about 20 times when he was 75. He died of a heart attack at age 76. My father knew exactly what he was doing, and he continued to do it until he died.
He was a miserable, evil person. Her mother was congenial and likable on the outside, and she was just as, in my opinion, as evil as the father.
I had a reporter say to me, did your mother know? And I said, it went on in our home for 18 years. Would you know if something went on in your home for 18 years? Of course she knew.
My mother walked down the hallway one night. I was about 11 or 12. My father always came in late at night.
And he'd been in my room for maybe a half hour. And all of a sudden, I heard footsteps coming down. I could hear the first step, and then the second step, very, very, very slowly, and then the third step. And she was now about 12 feet from my door. And I waited to hear another step. And it was a dramatic moment when everything stopped for all three of us. All three of us knew exactly what each one of us was thinking and knew. It's the only time I ever felt my father afraid. He just stopped. And I thought, it's going to be over. She's going to come in. And we waited for that dramatic moment. And then I heard a step up the steps and up the steps and up the steps. And I knew she would never come through that door. And I knew she would never, ever come to help me. But I do believe she made a decision. I believe she made a choice. And she didn't choose me.
This exact thing happened to my friend. One of my girlfriends that had been molested by their dad. I feel like all the moms knew from all three of my girlfriends that were molested by their dad. They all knew. I'm just saying. But this exact same event happened where the mom was outside the door and just didn't do anything. She saw her. My friend described it when she was drunk. She actually admitted to two girlfriends, me and another girlfriend, on total different occasions when she was drunk, that about her dad molesting her, and one time she explained this exact thing where the mom was outside the door, and just right when the dad was in her room and didn't do anything, like, oh my God, like, and that happens so much with these kind of incestuous families where the mom freaking knows and doesn't do shit.
He would put me on my knees and he would guide me, all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him.
Did you want to do this?
at some point, did he do some other things to you?
Yes.
What else did he do to you?
He used objects.
This is another example of the fallout of abuse and trauma happening. And now, and I feel like in their case, again, if you can accommodate nuance, okay. Some people, again, you always get, especially in the public domain, it's like either all or nothing, right? It's like, oh, they're just monsters. They're just making up this pity, sad story in order to excuse what the Menendez brothers, because this is one of the Menendez brothers, did to their parents. I tend to hold a more nuanced view where I do think that the Menendez brothers, who were raised by a psychopath, okay, an abusive, like entitled, rich, narcissistic psychopath who's also a pedophile on top of it, okay? So they were probably sociopaths themselves, okay? And then they have a situation where the mom's ignoring, again, the mom knew, again, totally didn't support them or protect her kids, okay? So you can see the level of dysfunction in the household. And then you get them being diddled on top of it. And then he was probably protective of his younger brother who was also being diddled. And I guess that's when the episode of when he killed the parents, because I think he was one of the main, perpetrators of this, I guess. And they just snapped. I'm just saying, like, I'm not making excuses for this. And they served their time. But dude, especially the shame, especially for men in dealing with this kind of stuff. And so I do believe that both can be true in this case, where these brothers were probably sociopaths themselves, because a lot of times I feel like psychopaths can breed sociopaths, because sociopaths are, dealing with their psychopathic parent, So, and again, the fallout was horrific and tragic. I mean, I don't know, man. And I feel so bad for them, because because I know, like, so many people that this shit's happened to, and I believe it. In their case, I totally believe that it happened, But at the same time, I also believe that they were both also probably sociopaths on top of it. So my last point being, which is why a lot of times I feel like abusers aren't believed, is because of the myth of the perfect victim, and because, like, say for example, the Menendez brothers, who did this pretty insane, heinous crime of snapping and killing their parents, right? People don't believe them, because the victim has to be pure and perfect and not have any kind of sordid past of their own, or have any kind of human faults of their own, or I feel like in their cases they were probably narcissistic sociopaths. Look at the environment they grew up in. I'm just saying, not making excuses for it, but so no one believes them. They're just making it up. I'm like, no, they could have been diddled. I'm just saying. So the myth of the perfect victim. The perfect victim is a dangerous, unrealistic standard that society imposes on survivors of abuse. According to this myth, victims must be likable, virtuous, and irreproachable. The perfect victim is weak and vulnerable. They must be involved in a respectable activity at the time of victimization. Their aggressor must be someone they didn't know and who society deems guilty. The perfect victim is always white, cisgender, and feminine. Survivors who deviate from these narrow expectations are treated with suspicion, contempt, or outright hostility. And because nearly no one fits the mold, it becomes all but impossible to be seen as a legitimate victim. Survivors are often disqualified from being believed, not because of facts, but because of who they are perceived to be.